the Belated Binge podcast.
If you're new to the Belated Binge podcast, each week we give away 3 meaningless awards to characters or moments in the chapters. That'll make sense here in just a minute. And we start this week with our game ball.
The game ball.
So this one's going to Molly Weasley. MI7 kids, sleeper agent, activated in the train station. She gets Harry on the train safely. She makes the biggest introduction of his life. She raised the kids who helped him onto the train, as well as 1/3 of our golden trio. And that's just one of these chapters. Molly is huge throughout this series. And this is her first nod, her first MVP, if you will, with this week's game ball. So next, we give away the red card.
Red card.
So the game ball is the good standout character. The red card is the one that we wish we could just kick out of the game completely. And this week, I'm going with Petunia Dursley. Vernon was garbage about the platform, sure. But what's worse is that Petunia knew how to get on the platform. She went with Lily at least once that we know of for sure from Snape's memories, but probably multiple times. Yet she doesn't tell Harry either. And they just leave an 11-year-old boy at a crowded train station in a busy city. He could have been kidnapped, trafficked, killed. They don't care because they're the worst. And Petunia is the worst. Let's do the fumble.
Fumble.
So the fumble doesn't go to a character. This goes more to the chapter, or you could say to the author if you wanted to. It's where does the text in the plot or just the events that take place in the chapters that we're going through, where does it drop the ball? What doesn't totally line up just right? For this week, you have a whole school of people in the train station running through one single pillar, and nobody notices. Have you ever went to any public place with people in it? Ever? Especially one with a time-sensitive deadline of any sort at all? Think concerts, amusement parks, the zoo, a theater. Who cares what it is? What happens is people first trickle in. Then a wave of people come in. And then lines form. Can you imagine a line of wizard families with trunks, owls, and all of their quills and cloaks and all the nonsense, just standing there, waiting on their turn to run through a brick wall? That's not subtle. What's the other way onto the platform? You would think maybe apparition, but in book 6, it becomes a big deal in school that Harry had done side-along apparition before, which suggests that families aren't traveling with their kids that way. Portkeys, maybe, but we don't get any indication at any point in the series that people are just taking portkeys directly onto the platform. The text leads us to believe that this one single pillar is the only option, and nobody ever sees them. Sure. Magic. With that, we've reached the end of this episode of the Belated Binge podcast, and I can't thank you enough for listening. But before we get out of here, I do want to let you know of a little announcement. If you missed it last week, I announced that next week is actually going to look a little bit different on the podcast. We're going to be having Amanda from The Fox and the Foxhounds that I mentioned earlier on as a co-host. If you're unfamiliar, she and her husband host a spoiler-free chapter-by-chapter podcast. As I mentioned, they're in the final book now, and since her husband had never read the books, she's had to avoid spoilers this whole time. Not able to give away anything. and she's done a good job. But I know she has some thoughts on a couple characters who will be front and center for next week's episode. So I'm excited to just let her fly. Aside from that, shout out to producer Jack, who we work like a dog every week. Remember to follow and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review if you enjoy the show. 5 stars, please. That's how we're going to tell these pesky little algorithms that we deserve to be seen and that people actually would like us if they got to listen. So let's give them the nudge that they need. If you'd like to support the show and be a part of making it, you can become a patron over on Patreon. We have 2 tiers over there, a $3 and a $5 tier, starters and all stars. With each tier, you receive early access to ad-free versions of our episodes. And with the all-star tier, you get exclusive content like Theory Corner this week, talking about Molly Weasley as MI7 Kids, and other bonus content that we're going to have on there as well. So if you do that, thank you. We're also on social media at Belated Binge on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our show segments are available on YouTube. And if you'd like to get in touch with us and you don't have social media because, I don't know, you're a dinosaur, you can email the show as well, belatedbinge@gmail.com. Welcome your feedback and your input on the topics of each episode. If you're reading along, next week, we're going to do chapters 8 and 9 of Sorcerer/Philosopher's Stone, again, with our special guest, Amanda from The Fox and the Foxhounds. Aside from that, that's all I got. So we'll see you back here on the Belated Binge podcast.
The Belated Binge Podcast.